here it is, are $90, while non-physical games are $80, which is wild. Not so if it so in terms of logistics and sourcing, I'm sure there are there's not vast, but there are several different components of making a Switch game, right? There's the chips. Those chips have to have different storage on there. You know, storage is not cheap. That is expensive. Any sort of form that you put it in. Additionally, you're going to have the plastic. The plastic itself, the casing, is also going to cost. And then you have to decide, you know, what sort of marketing material is going to go into the case itself or the packaging. You're going to have to decide what the cost of that packaging is to go forward. And then you're going to have to negotiate things like freight terms based on weight or availability or kind of how far it's traveling, all those different things. There's probably customs associated with that based on different types of material. Then you're probably going to have to pay the environmental people in each sort of nation or country in which you ship to, and there's going to be a charge for that as well. Also, various taxes will also be all considered. So all these things are always considered in every product service that you purchase, right? It's always in there all the time. And you typically negotiate that several different times, which I would imagine is part of the development process and a completely different entity than like developers and things like that. So then, of course, a marketing budget goes into that. Each sort of graphic for each game, that's going to sort of matter. And so there comes a cost associated with different marketing materials, ads, whatnot, right? Okay. So there's the raw cost for a game. There's a raw goods for the game. Then there is a cost for the completed configuration of the game. And then after it goes to a distributor, those distributors are going to mark it up. Now, I assume that there is a mass or an MSA deal with each one of those distributors in which Nintendo negotiates how much a distributor can actually charge the consumer for their products, because they want to remain price disciplined in the marketplace, and they sort of want to make sure that everybody is getting the exact same cost. It's not like a refrigerator or an appliance or something like that where another third-party distributor or something like that can actually mark it up, like mark a Nintendo Switch up because, hey, it costs them a little bit more to get there, or because they feel like it, right? There's also a price competitiveness point to all this as well, where the market will sort of be tested as to how much it will receive and how much that those goods can be adopted into the consumers, right? I assume, big assumption, huge assumption, that there is a voice of the customer survey that goes out to each one of their members or distributors or whatnot, and there's probably a target audience which is surveyed, and the feedback from that group goes all the way back to Nintendo to understand if the marketplace would and can absorb a price hike. Okay? That's how all that works. 100%. I can tell you without a doubt. Secondly, the target demographic for Nintendo is three different things. You can bundle them in three different areas. Number one, on-the-go consumers. So somebody that wants to be able to take their physical device, play it without a hard line into a television or another piece of superior hardware, or maybe even without a stable internet connection. They want to be able to do that. We've heard several different times that live service games is like the downfall of the gaming industry in itself. There's been so many different games that I actually have like purchased, and that game is no longer available, I'll give you two really great examples, and I'm sure everybody else that's watching or that watches the VOD can probably comment and give an example of another game. And I encourage you to do so. I would really, really like to understand and hear from the community at large other examples of this happening. But two off the dome I can think of. One, Silent Hill PT. Granted, it was a demo. It was a demo, but it was a demo that people had downloaded on their consoles. Okay? There was some legal battle between Kojima and it was somebody else, Konami. Yeah, it was Konami, Kojima, PlayStation, and sort of some rights kind of went back and forth. Kojima, I think, wasn't pleased with the product. Konami still wanted to push forward. PlayStation wanted to back. Like, it was a whole thing. Anyways, that to be said, it came off of the PlayStation Store. It's gone. The second, actually, was a game called Scott Pilgrim vs. the World that was done by Ubisoft. Ubisoft gained the rights to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World for a period of time from Sony, I believe it was, Sony Interactive, which actually distributed the game or had IP of the game in theaters, right? It was only done on physical copy. I actually had a copy, and then one day I turned it on and it was no longer there. Well, because of that battle back and forth, it took 2 years of a petition over like tens of thousands of dollars in which to raise for the smaller developer company to actually go back to BioWare, go back to Sony, and actually obtain the rights to the video game in which to publish it on interactive stores again. And now you can get it. It's no problem. But it took 2 years to do, and I paid for the game. Like, the game was like $20 or $30 at the time, and I paid full price out of the gate. And then to show up in my library and it was gone was like you were just cheated out of that cash. Like, there's nothing. And to not include a physical copy of a game, I know that there's other examples of that. I've just given two, but people have been burned in that arena too. To kind of go back to my point, so on the go, kids games, right? Kids games and sort of children safe gaming is a quick go-to with most Nintendo releases, right? I've got kids. My kids can play Nintendo games without much of a hubbub about them. Not a big deal, right? I rarely have to check and make sure that the game is good to go before my kids turn it on in which to play. I know that Kirby is not going to be, stabbing prostitutes in an alley or something like that. Mario's not going to be dealing drugs and sniffing blow with Bowser. Like, I'm pretty confident that that's not going to happen. So that's the other part. And then the third part is like the party goer. Not the party goer, but the party games, right? So everybody gets together with their family and does that. I don't know if you've ever been to a place, maybe grandma's house, maybe to great auntie's house or whatnot, but if you take your system over there, it's best that you don't have to mess with an online component or something like that. You can just pop in a physical copy. You're good to go. I don't need an update. I don't need any of the new fancy features or anything. I just want to play Mario Tennis. I just want to play Mario Party. Like, it's a casual gaming system. So, the other thing that people are really pissed about is this. So, they are backwards compatible, supposedly. Supposedly, the game is backwards compatible. And whenever you do that backwards compatibility, we'll also charge you. So if you want to play a Link in Time, or you want to play the very first Animal Crossing, you are going to have to pay a higher cost than what you would have paid had you bought the game, however, 10, 12 years ago. Doesn't matter. The original Nintendo was done in 1984. Okay, so if you want to play a game that was 8-bit in 1984, it's going to cost you 30, $40. Okay, a game in 1984 for that quality is, I think we paid somewhere like $12 for it. So you're seeing a double, triple, almost quadruple cost in the same IP that has not received any sort of update, that is on a higher powered machine, but a game that is no more technically advanced than whenever it came out in 1984. Okay. The reason I bring that up is one of the factors of causing a price increase is a couple fold, right? We talked about freight costs. Freight costs are going up all the time. For this one, I believe that Nintendo is just simply trying to stay price competitive with Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam. I think that that's what they're doing. And so they're raising their prices because, hey, it's good for the goose is good for the gander. I think that they are sourcing their products that may be affected by the tariffs. I can't imagine what those would be. In the cassettes or the cartridges, I don't know what that would be. I watched the cost of price, or the price of plastics, steel, fiberglass, glass, all these just raw components. They've not gone up more than 0.3 or 0.5%. Some even less than that, 0.008%. So that's not a lot. Again, you can research this for yourself. A PPI index is a public domain database. They do one every month, so you can kind of see what the trends are. You can run that through ChatGPT should you really choose to. For the launch of the Switch, they are trying to recoup the cost from their losses on some of those components, which may be taking a price increase, probably due to bad negotiation on their part for the components in which they are manufacturing elsewhere in Europe, parts of Asia, here in North America, South America. They probably didn't do a very good job, so they're seeing the increase of that. And so to recoup those costs, they're probably passing it on to the cartridges. That's what's happening. Okay. I would imagine that you will see the price of the cartridges start to go down the further we get past the launch of the Switch 2. I don't have any way of knowing that. If the market can't take it, that's what will happen. And then they will just see their burst recoup cost in the first year, maybe 2 years, until they recoup the cost of their losses on the unit. And then you'll start to see that go down. Honestly, it's probably where you're going to be. But just like every organization, large or small, they have a growth number targeted to the new release of any product. My guess is it's probably about 20 to 25%. That's where you're looking. Okay. So this is in line, effectively. Games currently for the regular Switch is about $60, okay, at the high end. So if you're seeing at the high end of this one is $90, it's pretty close. Pretty close to my projection. Okay. People are largely, I mean, they're pissed about the backwards compatibility because also since the Wii and the Wii U, right? And the Switch, they've always touted this backwards compatibility for their large library of games. Since the inception of the Nintendo, they've had the Nintendo, the SNES, the 64, the GameCube, the DS, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, DS Lite. I'm missing one. The Nintendo. That's a large category, or that's a breadth and like a big breadth and depth of games, right, for the Nintendo. And so, I mean, there's just a lot there. And so to get probably everybody's classics and favorites in there is probably a tall task, and it probably requires quite a bit of cloud storage. But that's not the consumer's fault. Don't tout backwards compatibility. Not a thing. Easy. There are retailers that you could work with in the space. There are lots of retro gaming shops and stuff like that where you just, hey, tell people to go that way. The problem is it's a potential cash grab for Nintendo, right? They're just like, oh, well, you could do that, or we've got it right here. So that's a problem. I mean, if I'm reading this correctly as well, if a physical copy has the game on it, right? I consider a physical copy like whenever I have a PlayStation 1, I've got Final Fantasy 7, different CDs that hold the game within that. Now there's bugs, there's glitches, okay? There are exploits that you can figure out that gamers that have been in the space just like they just dial into that stuff. That's what we do, right? We love a game. There's a beloved franchise. You want to dive in. So that's what people have done. And so with this, though, even having the cartridge still doesn't provide you with the whole game. It effectively provides you with a key to the game. There are places right now, as we're sitting here having this conversation, that you can go and get a CD key that you purchased that is not a physical copy of the game and just get it that way. Okay, and then you redeem it, and then now you have a copy. That's effectively what we've got here. We've got a USB stick with a text file of a game key. That is stupid. It's dumb. It's still a digital copy of the game. I've heard that there is if you have a physical copy of the game, it's faster. I don't know, faster download time or faster, like, the game play. I don't know how it would play any faster, so I would imagine it downloads a little bit quicker. Maybe there are certain files on the cartridge or the game key that you sort of can bypass that. But that, like, I mean, who sits there and looks at their computer whenever they're downloading a game? You click on it, I want to download this game. You go and make lunch, come back, watch maybe an episode of Invincible. You come back and you're good to go, right? Like, the game is ready. Okay, I'm downloading it. Unless it's Call of Duty, and then you have another hour to download shaders. I digress. Right? Yeah. So I tried to do some investigating as well on, like, what made, like, I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt to figure out, what the reason for this price hike is. And, aside from the tariffs piece, aside from accessibility of some of their hardware, so rise in demand of some of these chips for some of the other things that are coming out, like new computer components and stuff like that, and then just the tariffs. I don't know. I couldn't figure it. The only other thing that I can think of is that the marketing team or the value analysis team over at Nintendo was like, hey, if we are not putting advanced hardware in this thing, or we are not saying that we're as expensive as our PlayStation and Xbox and Steam counterparts, then effectively we're saying that we're a second-rate console. And so it's more of a battle of perception than anything, but that's not where their target demographics are. Ever. It's the same reason why like PlayStation doesn't put a lot of emphasis on mascot games or platformers or any of that stuff. Like that's not their bread and butter. Doesn't make any sense. So they're effectively moving away from their roots. And my opinion on this, it has been and it has always been to sort of keep gaming whole or as a whole, and sort of, not adhere to these price hikes and things like that, because until we figure out from the from the teams themselves, or we can sort of dial in as to what the reason for this just jump in cost is, I'm not interested.